welcome back to Global Education Zone. And this particular episode of our Further Mathematics for SS1, we're going to be dealing with a concept which is called logic. So logic is basically a kind of a branch of mathematics where you deal with reasoning skills. Now, I once heard that Elon Musk has a school in his house and they mostly deal with logic. And this logic is part of mathematics that helps us to reason better. So that's why today we're dealing with this course topic. And we have a lot of concepts to discuss in this course topic. So first of all, we're talking about basically what logic is. So you should be able to understand what logic is. So we're talking about recognizing true and false statements. We're talking about examples of negation, examples of convergence, inverse and contrapositive statements, and the antecedent and consequence of simple statements, and so on and so forth. So we are going to be dealing with a lot of concepts. So sit tight for this course and enjoy the course. So first of all, let's talk about the first thing we're dealing with today. And the first thing we'll be dealing with is basically negations. So we have what negations are. Negations is basically the negative of a particular statement or propositions. So in logic we have two different things we call our statements. We call them a propositions, and we can call them a consequence and a precedent. So basically a negation is basically the opposite of a particular logical statement. So the negation of P is written as that called P or whatever sign, whatever name for that sign is. So and then it is the statement it is false that P or not P. That is the symbol for not P. Not P is negation of P. So also when we move to the table, you have the truth table, and the truth table is a particular arrangement of the possible values of a logic commands. So then we'll have, for example, this negation, let's call it like a command. So when you have the statement as true, then negation of that statement is false. When you have the statement as false, the negation is true. It's kind of like an opposing feature of logical reasoning. Then we also have another concept in logical reasoning, which is about conditional statements. So conditional statements, they are concepts that are actually quite easy to understand. So for example, let P stand for the statement Lagos is a city in Nigeria, and Q stands for the statement Lagos is a city in Africa. So one way the two statements can be combined is if Lagos is a city in Nigeria, then Lagos is a city in Africa. So basically in this case you are combining statements together. Now just in case you don't understand what I'm talking about, you can check out my course and the video on logical reasoning in this channel. So the link is in this description of this video. So the link to my video on logical reasoning is in this video. You can check it out. So basically let's talk about something else. So the next concept we're talking about in this conditional statement is for example, if we say the statement if P then Q is a combination of two simple statements, then and it's called a compound statement. So when you combine two simple statements, you get a compound statement. So let's go on. So P implies Q. So the conditional statement is kind of like P implies Q, and that arrow is a forward arrow. So that means P implies Q. Or you can call it if P then Q, or you can say Q is necessary for P. You can say P is sufficient for Q. P only if Q. P follows from P. Q if P, and so on and so forth. Those are the different consequences we can get from our negation and rather from our conditional statement. So having talked about those conditional statements, let's move on to another concept on this video. So the next concept we're dealing with here is an example. So in this example, we are first going to talk about consider the following statement: if Cairo is in Africa, then 8 is an even number. So also have if Cairo is in Africa, then 8 is an odd number. If Cairo is in Asia, then 8 is an even number. If Cairo is in Asia, then 8 is an odd number. So the statements A, C, and D are all true, but the statement B is not true. So the reason is that the simple fact that the anecdote is true while the consequence is false. So the only reason, and one of the greatest reasons why your conditional statement will be false is if your anecdote is true. If your anecdote is true and the consequence is false. So the reason is that it depends majorly on your consequence. That's why we have a truth table for that. And in the truth table, you have that when your anecdote is true, and your consequence is true, then your statement is true overall. When your anecdote is true and your consequence is false, then your statement is false overall. Then when your anecdote is false and your consequence is true, your statement is true overall. And then when people are false, so you can start in general. The major limiting factor for this is basically the consequence. So it depends on the consequence, and it depends on if the statements agree with each other. That was basically the truth table of that. Let's move on to another concept. We'll talk about that. Let's move on to something else. So we have the converse, inverse, and contrapositive statements. So let's deal with converse, inverse, and contrapositive statements now. So in the converse statement, for example, if we say a triangle is equilateral, so when we invert it and say a triangle is equilateral, then the converse is P implies Q. So if we say a triangle is equilateral, a triangle is equiangular. So if they say if P then Q, then if we convert it, it will change if we interchange the terms and say if Q then P, then that is called a converse. So from A to B changes from B to A. It's like kind of like changing it and testing the commutativity of each of those terms. And we also have the inverse statement. So the inverse statement is the negation of both sides of the statement. So if you have P implies Q, then the negation of the inverse of that is not P implies not Q, which is not necessarily true. Then finally we have the contrapositive statement. So which is kind of like if P is a statement, a triangle is equilateral, and Q is a statement, a triangle is equiangular, then the statement Q minus Q implies minus Q minus P is if the triangle is not equiangular, then it is not equilateral. So that's the concept we're dealing with in this part of the video. I hope you're enjoying this concept. So this is a particular concept that you will basically be dealing with most of the time in this kind of part of mathematics. So let's move on to something else. Let's talk about this video has a lot of things we might need to understand. So because the conditional statement and logical reasoning itself is not very easy to understand, it contains a lot of concepts. Let's move on to the next concept, and in this concept we are going to be dealing with biconditional statement. So in this case, a biconditional statement is a statement in which is also called an equivalent statement. So in this case, you have the truth table here. So if P is true, if the antecedent is true and the consequence is true, then in general your statement is true, as you can see in the table below. So if your antecedent is true and your consequence is false, then in general your statement is false. Then in general, what you know is that once your antecedent and consequence they are not at par with each other. So if one is true, another is false. I mean, if they are not both true or if they are not both false, then in general your biconditional statement will be false. So biconditional statement gives us a true answer only if both the antecedent and consequence they are either both true or they are both false. So that is the next concept. Now I don't know if you've heard of chain rule. Chain rule is one concept which you have to explore most of the time. Chain rule is a very simple concept and it's very interesting for us to explore. But we're not going to be dealing with it right now because chain rule is a concept which we will deal in another episode. Let's move on to another concept in this video. So and finally we'll be dealing with examples for you. So there are examples which you can try out in this video. So the first example which you'll be able to try out. So these are exercises you can try out in this concept. And the first exercise that I want you to try out is a table. So we have a table here, and then we have the different values. So we have P, Q, negative P, and Q implies not P. So this is basically a truth table, and we have different columns of values. So you can see in the first column we have P values. Second column we have Q values. Third we have not P and Q. And the last column we have Q implies not P. So you can just study these values and then use them to answer exercise 8B. Then you can also tell me your answers in the comment section of this video. Let's see how far you've understood this topic and if you need further episodes and courses on this same topic. So I hope you understood that, and I hope to see you next episode. Thanks for watching.